I could never have charted my career path. And so any of you who think that you know where you'll be in a year or 2 or 5, good luck with that. Because I'm just saying that's not really how life works. And I think what you do is you get yourself in a good position so that when certain types of opportunities come along that you think sound pretty good, like me in the Big East, for example, you're in a position to be tapped.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of SBJ's On Stage. I'm your host, Taylor Bloom, and today's conversation is one of the most powerful yet. A look at leadership, legacy, and change through the eyes of the Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman. This conversation took place on September 25th, 2025 at SBJ's Game Changers Conference in New York City, where Ackerman sat down with Abe Madkour, Sports Business Journal's publisher and executive editor. From her trailblazing years as the founding president of the WNBA to leading the Big East through one of the most complex eras in college sports history, Ackerman brings a unique blend of experience, vision, and conviction. They explore the evolution of college athletics, the need for national leadership and clarity, and what true progress for women in sports looks like. It's an honest and empowering discussion from a commissioner and a changemaker who's helped redefine the landscape of sports. Let's go on stage.
You see the progress that we've talked about all morning. You see it in this room. You were just asking me about the size and scope of the Game Changers. It's got to be a little gratifying to see because you were in it from the beginning.
Yes, and to that point, I actually dug out an email that I sent to Richard Weiss, publisher of SBJ, founder of this great publication, on December 14th, 2010, so 15 years ago. I said, Richard, it was good to see you last week in New York. I thought the college conference, which you guys could do a great job with, was very informative and commend you, Abe, and your staff for a job well done, blah, blah, blah. As you and I have discussed, I think a conference focusing on issues relating to the business of women in sports is worth exploring.
Woo!
I've spoken to several people about this over the past several months and would be very interested in your views. Would it be possible to set up a call with you at your earliest convenience to discuss further? So it took a few years, right, Abe?
Started in 11.
Okay.
And the conference was in 13.
Exactly. But here we are. So I just want to commend you and Sports Business Journal and now Lori Fuller and everybody involved with this for making this such an incredible event for everybody. So
but you were there at the ground floor and the reason, and she, like I said, she's been such a confidant for all of us for so many years. How did playing at UVA, where 3-time captain and set records for scoring, how did that shape what you saw in sports between men and women?
Yeah, so I was really lucky to be a scholarship athlete in the early years of Title IX at the University of Virginia. Sort of specifically, I was among the first scholarship recipients for women's basketball. When I was there my first year, there was one scholarship for the entire team, and here's how it worked. I got tuition and fees, and a teammate got room and board. So I got to go to class, and she got to eat. And that was the sharing 101 that I learned. And so it was really ground floor, like a lot of things I've been part of, Abe. But I really, it did sort of reinforce my interest in sports, my interest in staying in sports when I graduated, all the skills that you hear that women athletes learn when they play on teams certainly came my way and are with me to this very day. And it really is gratifying now to see how far women's sports have come since those early Title IX.
And you saw the disparity between how the men's team were probably treated to the women's team.
Well, very much. I mean, when I was at Virginia, the men's team was Final Four material.
Right.
The great Ralph Sampson was there and others who lifted them literally to the Final Four. And they were well ahead of us, literally by decades, in terms of the facilities they had and the treatment of the program and the way they traveled and the fans that they had, the media interest. And it was hard to live the discrepancies there. But at the same time, we were really on the ground floor of that, and we got better every year. And by the time I graduated, we were nationally ranked, and it was better, and most of the team was on scholarship. So to be part of that journey actually, was something I'm glad I had a chance to do that.
You went, I believe, got a job in a major firm. and you met your future husband, I believe, and then stepped down, right? Is that kind of the path?
Well, when after I graduated from Virginia, my gap year was playing basketball for a women's club team in France because there was no WNBA. So I did that, and then I came back, went on to law school, and when I graduated, I tried to get a job in sports. And nobody wanted to hire a young lawyer who didn't have any job experience in sports, and there weren't as many to go around back then. This is in 1985. So I, as you said, Abe, signed on with a Wall Street law firm. I was in the corporate department for a couple of years. I met my husband Charlie. We had a secret romance, but it was all legit. Neither one of us were married, so it was all fine. So it wasn't like that. But we decided to get married. He stayed. He had a long career there. I left, and then my next job was in-house at the NBA in 1988. I got hired on as a staff attorney by Gary Bettman, who's then the general counsel of the league. Now, of course, the uber successful commissioner of the NHL. At a time when the legal department was 3 people, and so I was the junior lawyer in the department, and was assigned sort of random things, like I did a little salary cap over here, and I did a little event management there, and some IP over here. And then, within a year or two, the department, like the league in general, had grown, and my duties started to change.
I think your final interview, when I read something, your final interview process was with, these are legends in the business, a man named Joel Litvin, Gary Bettman, Russ Granick, and then once you cleared those 3, you interviewed with David Stern?
Exactly.
What a run.
That was like exhausting.
That's quite an interview process.
Yeah, and it was funny because when I was in the waiting room waiting to see David, my 4th interview, Joel walked by and he said, "Oh, you're here to see David?" I said, "Yeah, I was very nervous." He said, "He's going to ask you about," and he told me what something having to do with my law school, something I did in law school, and I hadn't thought about that in ages. And so in the 3 minutes, then David's assistant came out, walked me to his office, and in that 3 minutes, I'm just racking my brain going, oh my God, he's going to ask me about that. And I sat down, and he asked me about that. And had Joel not given me the warning, I think, about that, I'm not sure I would have, I think he was surprised and maybe a little impressed that I could answer the question about that. So it was a very stressful moment. But I got the job, and the rest was sort of history.
Years later, you and a gentleman named Rick Welts, Gary Stevenson, go on a road show to try to convince other owners about a women's basketball league. Right. And the reaction was what?
The reaction was actually pretty receptive. And why was that? Well, because we were doing the road show at a time when the USA was gearing up for the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. And as some people in this room, notably Carol Stiff and others know, the NBA was very much behind the preparations of that team, which was trying to reclaim the gold medal in Atlanta. And so we were quietly supporting that and using that in effect as a laboratory, as a way to test interest, high-level interest in the best women's basketball players at that time. And we had a women's dream team, with that team, with Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops and Rebecca Lobo right out of UConn and many others. And so while that team was unfolding, getting prepared for Atlanta, the next summer we were, again, quietly putting the business plan together for the WNBA. And so I think there was openness because David was very persuasive, and he was the guy that had to get to the NBA owners at that time to explain to them why women were so important to the future of the game of basketball. And he did that. We knew women's college basketball was sort of cresting because the Women's Final Four at that time was really a widely anticipated event. We had the great UConn-Tennessee rivalries at that time, which were getting people excited and energized. And so we had stuff to work with, I guess, Abe, is the answer, so that when we did our road show, and I remember being with Steve Mills and Gary Stevenson and Rick and Adam Silver, we were all part of that team. Owners were sort of, business was good in the NBA. Why not? Let's take a chance on this. And so we had the groundwork laid, and the league started the summer after Atlanta. You
said the early success of the W, because the early success was impressive, was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it was certainly a blessing because when you're sort of spitting out targets to your board, you want to hit those targets. In fact, in the early planning of the league, we were projecting 3,000 to 5,000 fans a game. How did we come up with that number? That's what women's college basketball programs at the higher levels were doing at that time. So we just made it up. And then when we started to see the interest that was picking up as we were getting closer to that first season, we upgraded the projections, I think, to 5 to 7. And then as it turned out, our very first year, we averaged almost 10,000 fans a game. We eclipsed that the second year, and again the third year. And then, things started to plateau off. But the fact that there, was that success really did raise people's expectations about what we could keep doing year after year after year. And so, when that didn't happen in later years, I think that's probably where the curse part comes in.
Are you surprised to see where it is today?
I'm thrilled to see where it is today. I mean, when we started this, the mantra really was, it's going to take a generation, which is 25 years. 25 to 30 years. And I remember just spitting out the lines about it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we're hoping that the young children, boys and girls of today who are coming with their parents or their grandparents are going to be the paying customers of tomorrow. And that's going to, if they're 3 today and they're going to a game, then when they're 30, maybe they'll be buying a season ticket. And that's sort of, seemingly to me, kind of what's happened. And then, we had the benefit, of course, of societal currents, which weren't really in our favor quite as much in 1996 and 1997. Society has changed. I think we were ahead of our time in the way we were positioning the league, the way we were speaking about the power of women, the compelling nature of these women as role models, all those things. We kind of got some sideways looks by some people, and that was hard. There were naysayers around many corners, but we kept at it. And I really commend the NBA for sticking with it all these years. And really, the payout now is just, it's great to see it. Really happy for them.
A lot of this morning's been about non-traditional challenges, risks, opportunities. When you went to the Big East, I remember even my phone or my email was, wow, that was, I did not see that coming. Because Val, you took some time off, you were teaching and doing some things, but becoming a commissioner of a major conference didn't seem like your background.
Well, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming either. And you're right. When I left the WNBA, it had a lot to do with, and all of you in the room, you'll have your own journeys, I think, with your careers. I mean, you'll have to make your own decisions about how your family fits into the equation, how the pieces of your life come together, and that really was what happened to me after 16 years at the NBA, WNBA. I just got tired. And my kids, I have 2 daughters now, 32 and 30, but they were infants, really, when the league started. So there I was running around. My husband was still at the firm. So we had that high wire act that many, working parents have. And so after a while, I just sort of needed a break. So I did take time off. I filled that in with work with USA Basketball and teaching, as you said, and consulting work and other things that sort of came my way. But it was literally, my younger daughter, Sally, was graduating from high school in 2013. And, the Big East at that time, as you've been following, it went through a period of tremendous fracture and realignment. The old Big East broke up, schools were leaving, the basketball schools pulled out of the old league, they added some other basketball schools to form the new Big East in 2013, and then they went looking for a commissioner. And so I got approached by a search firm. It was actually Liz Boardman, now Moulton at Elevate, was the person who brought me in. And, it just seemed like the right opportunity for me at the right time. It was in New York. It was a sort of mimicked in some ways the startup nature of the WNBA. Very different startups, but the Big East was starting from scratch back then. And I
had no office? Yeah,
I had nothing. But I mean, the old league had all the infrastructure, so I was saying it's like me and my iPhone starting the league because I didn't have much else to work with in terms of staff or resources. But it was, I thought, going to be a great opportunity. I love that it was basketball. I am an admiration of football, but I didn't want to work in football, and the Big East now doesn't sponsor football, so I didn't have to deal with that. And it just seemed like a way to. And I knew Dave Gavitt, actually, who had founded the league in '79 and had worked for him during my years at the NBA, worked with him. And so for me, it just sort of, things just, you kind of know it when you have an opportunity. You kind of know when it's right. And for me, that's how I felt about the Big East now 12 years ago.
We had on the panel today, Kim Dameron and I both agreed an athletic director job is the hardest job in sports. I would argue a conference commissioner, 1A, 1B.
The AD is 1A for me.
For sure.
Really, yeah.
Hardest job.
Right now. I mean, what our ADs are going through right now is we navigate the tumult in college sports. I was telling Abe earlier, I was just at a meeting in Chicago yesterday. All 32 Division I commissioners meet as a group in person twice a year. So we had our meeting in Chicago, and all the talk now is about the new model, the revenue sharing model, whether Congress is going to intervene. There is a bill right now that has gone a ways within the House. It's passed through 2 important committees, has a shot of getting to the full floor of the House for a vote by the full membership. If that were to happen and they approved it, it would go on to the Senate. And many of us believe that that's probably our best shot at the moment of dealing with the uncertainty right now around the legal challenges affecting college sports, the Wild West nature of dealing with name, image, and likeness, dealing with continuing antitrust lawsuits. It's really, it's very hard right now, I'd say, to draft a 5-year plan, but it really is on the backs of the ADs now to deal with their athletes, this changing model, the revenue sharing, the fundraising that's needed in order to do the revenue sharing, and just sort of the normal pressures of the job. And so I know our guys in the Big East work very hard, and I tip my hat to ADs all around the country because they're really dealing with a lot right now.
Can I ask you a few questions about some quotes that I read of yours throughout the years that I think could be enlightening? Okay, so not all paths are linear. Pretty basic, but explain why you say that.
Well, that's my story. I mean, when I got out of college, when you go to college, you sort of are doing this thing, right? But when you get out, then all of a sudden the zigging and the zagging starts, and that's sort of what happened with me. And I could never have charted my career path. And so any of you who think that you know where you'll be in a year or 2 or 5, good luck with that, because I'm just saying that's not really how life works. And I think what you do is you get yourself in a good position so that when certain types of opportunities come along that you think sound pretty good, like me in the Big East, for example, you're in a position to to be tapped. And so my advice to women, young women especially, is embrace that journey. And do a good job wherever you are along the way, because your reputation will precede you. When you're looking to get your next job, I can sort of promise people are calling about you. They're calling to say, hey, what do you know? Is this person a hard worker? Are they a good teammate, good communicator? Is this somebody that we would want to have as part of our organization? So, but I think if you can embrace the idea that it may not be the sort of step by step that you sort of expected or you thought when you were in school, and it sort of is more fluid, I think good things can happen.
The most successful women in business are part female, part male.
Okay, don't get offended by anybody. I know we're sort of in a fraught time on gender, but what I meant when I said that is I do think there are certain qualities about men and women, at least my experience, okay, that are just different. I mean, when I'm with like some of my girlfriends here who are sitting around here, I see a lot of them. I'm sort of a different person than I am when I'm, the only woman in the room, which still happens to me in certain business settings that I'm in. I just find, women. I think if you can blend what makes women such effective leaders, and I want to nod to Patty Phillips, whose career is based on more women leaders, and making that happen. And what makes the skills around just working hard, being good teammates, being competitive, but being collaborative, being human, with skills that sometimes we've seen get men ahead. Being maybe a little bit more aggressive, being competitive, being tough, being thick-skinned about certain things. I mean, if you can sort of blend all of those qualities into your being, I have found that that's, especially in the sports business, which has a history, frankly, of being very male-dominated, I think you can go far.
I get this one a lot. The hardest part is knowing when to make a move.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I think that could apply in any business setting. If you're in a negotiation, when do you give? When do you, hold up? When do you fold up? That kind of thing, it I think applies to the workplace. But I do think, back to my earlier comments, it does affect, for all of us, our career journeys.
Yeah.
I mean, when do you stick with a job? Do you see yourself there in a few years? Do you see a leadership pathway for yourself? Do you like your boss? Is there other opportunities out there? I think that's really personal. And you may well have a kitchen cabinet, the people that you would go to, that you would call, say, hey, what do you think I should do? And I hope you do, because you need those people in your lives who are advising you on things, seeing things maybe you don't see, knowing things you don't know. But at the end of the day, these kinds of decisions really are personal. And I know when I left the WNBA, that was really hard for me. I mean, this was like, I'm going to cry. I mean, that was like my third kid giving birth to the league. But it really, I had missed a lot of things at home. I didn't miss many big things, but I missed a lot of little things, being a mother of young kids. The busy season of the league's in the summer. So if you're a parent, your kids are off from school in the summer. That's when I'm on the road all the time. That was hard. And some things about the job were frankly getting tough. I mean, ticket sales were sort of going down. David was getting very difficult and demanding about that. And so, at some point I just said, you know what, I've done what I can do for this. I did my part. I worked a good shift. And so now I'm, and it felt like Diana Taurasi was coming in the league. That was my last draft in 2004. Diana was coming in, and I thought to myself, that's Michael Jordan. So they're going to be fine. And that was the 2004 Olympics. We won a gold medal there, and I was working on that. And I said, you know what, this is as good a time as any to make the move. And so that's what happened to me. And so I think all of you are going to probably go through a similar exercise in your own situations.
Let's play a little word game, can we?
Sure.
David Stern.
Complicated, yeah. Do you want one word, or do you want
You can elaborate.
Really, really complicated?
Do you see any of you?
Yeah, a little.
David and you now, the way you manage.
Yeah, a little bit. But that's an important point, because David was a certain type of a leader. He evolved as a leader, even in the short time I was at the league, 16 years. He was a visionary. He was a perfectionist, and a micromanager, which you don't really want in the CEO, but that rubs off on people, and you really do understand the importance of details. And so there are many days, where I say, God, he and I would fight, because once I got into college sports, he would sort of, say they should be doing this, and those presidents should be doing that. I'm like, David, this is like, you're not running this, okay? This is not how they think about it in this space. So we would debate each other about what the right thing to do on certain things relating to college basketball. But he really, he made my career, and it remains a shock in my life that he's not around anymore.
A name that maybe some aren't as familiar with, Russ Granick.
Russ Granick was the longtime deputy commissioner at the league. He was sort of yin to David's yang. I mean, David could be mercurial. Russ was like the so-called flatline. He never seemed to get ruffled about anything. Very practical, model boss. And I would describe him as he who gets things done. Mm-hmm. He knew how to execute.
He was an operator and an executor.
The best.
You've had challenging jobs. Which has been a biggest challenge in your career?
Well, I would say the Big East has been really, even though the WNBA was really hard, and working for David was challenging at times, the fact was David really wanted to be the decider on things at the league. I had a lot of autonomy on sort of day to day, but when it came to the really big things, David wanted to be in on everything. And so you didn't get that same sort of test of leadership, if that makes sense, certain things. But the Big East, the buck stops at me. Now, I have a board. That's how it works in college sports. Commissioners, we report to boards, which are made up of the presidents of our schools. So the board, and right now my board chair is president of St. John's. That's been, rotating. And so I answer to them, and I'm very careful about what I do. I think all the time, okay, do I have to bring this to the board, tell them about it, ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, whatever it is. I think about that a lot. But I have a lot of, they trust me, I think, and they've given me a lot of room to operate at the league. And so that adds to another feeling of pressure. Right. Because it is, it really is on me. And then back to my earlier point, restarting the Big East was really challenging. Yeah. That was a tough deal.
And so, not to sound at all negative or put you in a corner, but could David's style work in 2025? David Stern's leadership style.
Well, there was David, and then there was Uncle David. Okay, Uncle David would survive.
Right. He was.
This environment. Yeah, because he really had a side of him. That was back to my point about being complicated. He could really be a mensch. If you needed something on a personal level, he was there. I mean. He knew every doctor in New York City. So if you had a medical issue or your family member had a medical issue, you would go to David and you'd have an appointment in that doctor's office the next day. That was the kind of connectivity he had to the medical profession in New York City. But I think, I'm not David, to your point earlier. I mean, I don't have the kind of style he had in terms of getting worked up, in ways that could make people feel uncomfortable. That's not my style. If I get angry about something, I try to manage it in a different way. I try to deal with things in a different way. So I'm not sure. I think he would probably have to modify his style, to be honest, in today's working environment.
Question from the audience, Val. As you think about the future of college sports, which professional sports, workflows, or systems do you expect colleges will need to adapt to stay competitive and relevant? Are there things in the pro space?
Well, I think, what we're seeing in college sports is a real metamorphosis from an industry sector that for many, many years was about sort of the primacy of academics, sports in the context of higher education, sports as co-curricular activities, athletes sort of happy to be there, especially if they were getting a full ride. And then what happened is sort of the commercial outcomes took off. And so now we've got, particularly in certain sports, at certain schools. And so now we've got all of this, frankly, money in the system. And that really has affected, I think, the incentives in the system. And I think it has affected, to your point, Abe, what the skill set is that would be required in order to thrive under this new model. I do think there's room for a blended approach here, the best of college sports. You still need on campuses, for example, and in commissioners and in conference offices, people who understand the basics of college sports, what the roles of the NCAA national office, the conferences, the schools are, how to navigate sort of the relationships. There's 360 schools in Division I alone. There's 1,100 schools under this one umbrella. It's a really complicated bureaucracy, and Charlie Baker has a hard job right now trying to keep all of that together. But you've got to know that if you're in my position, but you also have to be a business person. You've got to understand how the television works, how the sponsorship works. A lot of talk in our space right now, as you know well, about should there be alternate funding vehicles, should there be equity, should there be debt, should there be loans, how are we going to get more money into the system so that the players can be compensated in the ways that schools feel like they have to compensate them in order to keep their talent, their prospects at winning and being competitive at a high level. So I do think it is, there are models that we can pull from the pro leagues, not all of them. I don't think you can sort of drop it wholesale into the college space, but I do think there are learnings there that can be applied.
Are you an optimist on college sports?
I would be more of an optimist if Congress, frankly, were to do what people hope they will do and step in and create a law that would reconcile all of the federal laws that are colliding right now in the college space. We've got labor laws, question about whether student athletes should be employees within the meaning of the federal labor laws. We've got antitrust challenges that are continuing. I was telling Abe earlier, right now NCAA is already, in the last several weeks, has been defending 30-plus lawsuits on how many years a college student gets to be a college student athlete. The old idea, well, it's usually 4 years because that's how long it usually takes to get through college, is being challenged. Because you can make money now, you've got athletes saying, hey, how come I can't just keep doing this? Yeah, I'm 25 or 26, but this is a really good deal. I'm making money now. Why should I only get 4 years out of this? So the NCAA right now is being asked to defend the most basic of operating requirements, and so that's a challenge. And so, and then you've got states jumping in, passing their own laws. So it's creating a really complicated operating environment. So I think if Congress can step in and create some order and certainty where there's not much right now, Abe, I think that the best of college sports can survive.
Keep your eye on that, because that's going to probably happen.
That'll be a big story.
That'll be a big story. All right, you see the time. Let's do some quick hitters. If you were you are a commissioner. But if you were the commissioner of college basketball, what would you change about college basketball today?
Okay, some of you are going to smile. Combined Final Four.
Still?
Okay,
Yep.
I'm still on the men and women. Same weekend, same city, not this bouncing around. Okay, I think it could work. Please, colleagues in college sports, let's try it one time. That's all I ask.
Is it any closer to being tried?
I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I'm working.
Right. Right, I know.
Yep.
Okay, next panel, advice to your younger self. What would be your advice to your younger self?
You know, I'm not going to say don't work as hard, because I really don't think I could have gotten to what I gotten to today if I hadn't worked my ass off. And I just would tell all of you that's the price you pay to, you know, do certain things. Maybe smile a little bit more. Yeah.
It's a good one. Favorite athlete growing up was?
John Havlicek.
John Havlicek. I love it.
And Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci.
Yep. Those were.
And BJK, of course, you know, Billie Jean King, of course.
Help me finish this sentence. All of us in this room, the sports industry, we need to do a better job of?
Well, here's what I would say. Here's my lecture. So I hope with everything that's going on in our country, okay, that we as an industry don't take our eye off the importance of diversification in the leadership ranks of our business. Okay? Okay? We look at this room. Okay, you all, my heart is soaring looking around at this audience, okay? As somebody who came up almost 40 years ago when there weren't many women in leadership positions, there weren't many people of color, men or women, okay? And I look around now and I see the progress that has been made over the last 3 or 4 decades. I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to see us as an industry go backwards. So I do hope, Abe, and I applaud you for doing conferences like this. I applaud people like Patty and Sue Roden and Kathy Francis from WISE, because they're leading the charge on this. You know, we've got a lot of freedom fighters out there who are keeping their foot on the pedal as we look to make sure that the leader ranks of sports match up with our athlete populations. And so that's my answer, Abe. I hope we can just keep doing it, because that's the most important thing to me at this stage of my career.
You can see why she's a Hall of Famer. Give it up for Val Ackerman.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of On Stage. If you enjoyed this exclusive conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with colleagues or anyone interested in the leadership lessons shaping the future of sports. As you think about this discussion with Val Ackerman, here's a thought starter. What does leadership with purpose look like in your organization? And how are you creating space for the next generation to lead? I'd love to hear how you're approaching it. Send me a note at tbloom@sportsbusinessjournal.com. We'll be back next week with another conversation from a leader shaping the business of sports. Until next time, stay tuned and stay ahead. This is On Stage.